Hello and welcome to the Thoroughbred Breeders Podcast, brought to you by the Thoroughbred Breeders Association. I'm Naomi Mellor, CEO of the TBA, and it's my pleasure to be your host today. At the TBA, we are here to support you, to help you learn, to nurture your interest, and to answer any questions you may have as you breed, care for, and maintain your passion for these wonderful animals. We're also all about growing the fantastic community that exists in thoroughbred breeding, wherever you are in the world. In each episode, we'll be discussing developments, news, stories, and experiences, and helping you to feel connected to our work and your community. You can follow us on socials at thetba.gb, and do feel free to email us. We'd love to hear from you, and we're at info@thetba.co.uk. Now, on with the show. Wherever you live, if you're owning, breeding or raising horses, then grass will be a huge topic with which you are familiar, I'm sure. And we're lucky to be joined by two guests today with a huge knowledge of that subject. First up is Paul Overton, an agronomist who specialises in equine premises and in particular stud farms. He's been in the business for over 30 years and is a fantastic, warm, engaging person to listen to. I spoke to him about paddock management, which might sound dull, but really isn't. So as you've just been hearing, I am sitting down this afternoon with Paul Overton, equine agronomist, who you may well have heard on the TBA podcast previously. He has been a previous guest a couple of years ago. He is also an integral part of the TBA's pasture management courses on TB Ed, which if you are interested in learning more about pasture, we have two courses, one foundation and one intermediate, which are available for all of our members to go and have a look at. So Paul and I were just chatting before we started recording about weather. We love to talk about the weather in the UK. Nothing better than chatting about the weather. And Paul, you were saying that we're recording this at the end of April. It's been a very dry month in the southeast, but elsewhere in the UK, Scotland, the north, the west, there's actually been a kind of average amount of rainfall, which is...
Yes, in some places above average. It is a UK industry, and the Gulf Stream does affect where the rain lands, and Ireland and the west coast right up to the north have had a probably average or above average rainfall at times. We're stuck out on the east, so we are very sensitive to dry periods and hosepipe bans and things like that. Probably Berkshire around Newbury, Wantage, Lambourne, they've probably not had it as dry as us, but probably not had it as wet as the West Country and more central Scotland, Aberdeenshire, Scotland. So weather patterns vary. I think the take-home message from that is we've got to be a bit more resilient. We can't bank on a normal spring or a normal autumn. So we've got to be well aware that we're not going to get normal conditions. We have to plan for weather events of either excess moisture or lacking of moisture, excessive temperatures or quite low temperatures. So there's a resilience factor that's got to be built into all our plans, planning and budgets.
And you just mentioned to me about worms not reading the calendar, and I really liked that. We were just chatting about quite a lot of traditional practices where you mentioned harrowing. There's certainly planting things that are done in certain months of the year by tradition. Can you just talk me through what you were saying about that, Paul? Because I think it's really interesting to kind of actually critically think about that as a concept.
Several conversations are on site and on farms is about the calendar. April, February, March, April. Oh, should we do that in the autumn? And this, that, and the other. Grass plants and parasites don't have watches. They don't have calendars. They respond to temperature, light, day length, light, and humidity and moisture. So I'm very much against looking at things monthly or a calendar month. We've got diaries, we've got calendars, but it doesn't mean to say one year was at all like the last year. So I think we first of all need a flexible thinking there. We should be doing things when we feel it's right, not when the calendar says we did it last year, or some of the prescriptions come out, oh, this is a spring application or this is a spring thing. Because we can have cold springs, wet springs, we can have dry springs. So I think we need to be flexible in our thinking, and we need to build in that resilience that if the conditions are right, if it looks right, it feels right, go with it. Things like overseeding, grass seed is far more intelligent than we give it any kind of credence for.
I love that thought of intelligent grass.
Well, grass over thousands of years has built in an enhanced dormancy protection, so it won't all flush at once. If I was a wheat farmer and I sow wheat and 10 days later it's not up, I'm thinking, why? I've got a problem. Because wheat and barleys and the arable crops have been bred for uniformity. Grasses are totally still very natural. There's nothing added to grass seed. It's the same as if it falls out of seeds hay on the floor. And I've seen where you've been feeding out during the winter, you move the hay, there'll be fresh grass growing there. I've seen grass grow any time of the year. And if you put on 10 kilos of grass seed, not all 10 kilos will germinate. It will probably go in small amounts. Obviously, the bigger percentage will germinate if we've got soil seed contact and there's moisture. But if it's dry, it will sit there just as if it's in a bag. And it's better out in the field than it is in the bag.
At least it's got the opportunity to grow in the field. It doesn't have that in the bag. So with that in mind, when we're talking about variations in weather conditions around the UK at the moment, we've had fairly long winter. Some people have had a very wet winter as well. So there's the possibility of poaching of paddocks and managing that. And then secondly, preparing for long spells of dry weather. Should we tackle poaching of ground first, Paul? What are your kind of recommendations for managing that poaching in pastures we are in April at the moment. We're not going by the calendar, as you were just saying. But given the time of year, what are your sort of thoughts on poached paddocks going forwards?
Firstly, let's not feel guilty about poaching paddocks, because we've got to use paddocks. We're not park keepers. We've got to use. So we will, and we joked about it earlier, use and abuse, rest and repair and rest. That's got to really be the mantra. It's very simple, but it always works. You will need to use sometimes in wet periods and whatever, and you will then make sure you need to repair and rest. Now, I think one of the things are repair should take place as soon as possible, and that sounds a very obvious thing, but it's not a practice that's done. Sometimes we drag it out over quite a little period. If you're at Newmarket at races on Saturday or after the Grand National, as soon as the last race is run, the ground crew are out there repairing straight away.
So when you talk about repair, just for clarification for people that might not have heard you speak about it before, you're talking about actually putting in divots, etc., or actually physically levelling the ground, yeah?
Because first base, we've got to have a safe and level surface. We can't put horses out on pasture that's not safe and level, because they will play around, they will run around. The reason it's poached is because they've screeched to a hole and made footmarks. So we need to repair. We need to repair and level. So safe and level is paramount. And then we need to replace the cover, because if we've got a cover of grass in there, then we'll have a healthy sward to work on. And the race courses, they're always plugging a bit extra soil, a bit of soil sand mixed with seed. If you go to Wimbledon, as soon as the prize has been given, nets are down, bang, they're out there preparing for next year's tournament. And we can take that from sports turf management, that you use, you repair, and give the maximum rest. And the two things, whether we're repairing it after wet or whether we're repairing after dry, we're trying to get soil health back and soil structure back. If we've damaged, if it's very dry or it's very wet, we've damaged soil structure. And if we haven't got good soil structure, you won't get good soil health. If you haven't got good soil health, you won't get good grass. And if you don't get good grass, even grass growth, you won't get all the minerals and the good stuff that we need to get into the horse. And I do think sometimes we forget our first base is to go for what the grass needs, because we always jump to what the horse needs from it. But if you don't get the basic grass needs done first, and a healthy bit of grass, then you won't get the minerals through. Fresh grass is always good grass, whether it's Michelin or vintage or, 5 Michelin stars or not, we can decide that later. But good leafy grass has got to be our first thing. A good cover of grass will also make it softer and better for joints and feet and things like that.
So if you've got somebody listening to this who thinks they're looking out at some paddocks outside and haven't done anything in terms of looking at their soil before, and actually some people will have a really good grasp on soil analysis, they know exactly what the quality of their grass is. For somebody who's listening to this thinking, I haven't got a clue about this, how do you start learning what your soil is like and how you need to look after it to better improve that soil for your grass?
Your eyes, your feet, and a fork.
It's lovely to hear. Nice and simple.
Just, if it's uneven for you to walk across it, if it feels hard underfoot, then there's an issue. If it's sloppy and you've got standing water on it, there's an issue. So we don't need any fancy tests to really tell us, use your eyes. Lot of it's just about confidence in your own ability and to do it. So we probably know what is wrong, and we know it's wrong, but then we've got to come around, how do we put it right? And this is getting things in the right order of repair is something that you can take a bit of advice on, and just a bit of forethought. One, you've got to do it when the ground conditions are right, because one day it will be wet and really sloppy, and the next day it can be, or next week it can be set like concrete, especially here in the east, and dries very quickly. And for anybody who's on a stronger clayer type soil, it's sloppy and poachy one day, and then it's concrete. So what can we do with it? If I was a farmer, I'd plough it up and drag big tines through it and start again. We can't do that. We have to probably think, and you can't roll holes out. You can roll pastry, but you can't roll holes out. And if we roll, especially when it's wet, we just make things firmer. It goes like a tabletop. We've got to remember, we need that soil health, that soil structure. We need when it rains for it to drain, but we also need it to hold a level of moisture back the other way. We need that movement of moisture down and movement of moisture back up again. So sometimes compost and using organic material can be a way of filling those holes in. Going back to the race course, what do? They've got a bucket and they've got some sand and soil mix. They tip it in the hole and we chuck a bit of seed on the top. So we can do that on just a bigger process. And with the world events and the price of fertilizer and bag fertilizer flying through the roof, compost and organic materials are we're gonna have to use them. We need to use them. We need to look at them, and they've got whatever the nutrient and some of the feel-good factor is with them. They actually do fill holes in, and they will enhance your soil condition. If we had a veg plot at home, we'd dig it over and dig some compost in it. We can't dig it over, but we can put the compost.
Can put the compost in, yeah, great. And on that, you mentioned eyes and feet and a fork. Once people start getting into a little bit more depth, that's your first port of call for kind of soil health and assessing. You've been working with Alice here at the TBA on some soil testing. Do you want to just go into a little bit about what the information people might want to find out when they're getting a little bit more into things at all?
Of course. So obviously a soil test is a test of the soil. Sometimes I think we believe that it's a bit like the 11 plus. You either pass or you fail. There's no such thing as good or bad soil. There's the soil you've got. So work with what you've got. Work to improve what you've got. It'll always slip backwards because we've got to use it. We've got to abuse it, but we've got to try and improve it. So a soil test will tell you the phosphate, potash, magnesium, and your general pH of your soil. That's just an indication. They do come back with a traffic light system, so people look at reds and look at ambers and look at greens and think, oh, should I have a red? Should I have a green? How do I do this? To change soil indices and soil levels is a big job. Even as a farmer, it's a big job. So kind of working with what you got, replacing what you're taking away. Now, basically in equine, we take very little away. If I'm farming, I'm probably looking to take 3 or 4 ton of grain away. I'm taking 3 or 4 ton of straw off. So I'm removing a massive amount of nutrients. If I'm silaging, I'm taking massive amounts of silage off. All we're doing is recycling. And basically horses recycle an awful lot of ammonia in the urine. In the smaller paddocks, we are taking the muck away, but in some of the bigger paddocks, we're not. That's a personal preference. Sheep are very good and cattle are very good at recycling nutrients. So whatever they eat, a lot of it goes back. Yes, some goes away in muscle, but a lot of it stays on the paddock. Any topping, we all put our garden clippings on the compost heap, and it's a magnificent source of organic matter and nutrients. So don't be afraid of topping. I know people will think, oh, there's a cost to topping. Can I go with a longer grass self-seeding policy, which personally I think is difficult because horses like short grass. They can only really digest leaf grass. They can't digest stalk or the lignum until it's been rendered in hay.
And that's quite different to cattle, isn't it? Who would be quite happy on longer grass, and horses need a bit shorter and a bit more care.
Yeah, and horses love sugar, so fructose and glucose. So when grass grows, it makes fructose and glucose as energy for itself. So horses, and you can always see them grazing hard in the morning when those sugar levels are high. That's why they like, sometimes if they get a lawn area, if you've got a longer grass scenario, they'll go for around the feed pots where they lawn it down, and they can get it into a bit of sweeter, more digestible form for them. So I think it's important to recognise this. So soil samples are the baseline. Love it or leave it, that's what you've got. If you're very low in pH, so I'm talking here below 6, you can add lime to increase your pH. But if you get too high in pH, and a lot of Yorkshire, a lot of Newmarket, and a lot of Wantage, Lambourne are on chalk heaths and a chalkland. So our pH is a 7s and 8s, and actually too high, because what we forget in all this, we can get too much of a good thing. If you've got too high a pH, you can lock up some of your what we call minor or essential minerals, copper, zincs, and things like that. But if we've got a high pH, we can't do anything about it. We've got to live with it.
Okay.
But we've probably got to remember, don't make it any worse. Don't put any more lime on the
more
limey soil, if you know what I mean.
If you've got chalk, don't make it chalkier.
Yeah, stop digging. So that's your soil side of it. What I'm very much in favour of herbage tests. Herbage tests at the right time. When I go onto a stud, there's only 3 types of paddocks. First type is one with a horse in it. So that's where I can do a herbage test, because I'm testing what the horse is actually eating.
Mm-hmm.
The paddock they're going to.
So that's type number 2. Paddock 1, horse in. Paddock 2, horse going to.
That should be already prepped. Yes, I can test that, but I'd probably rather test it closest when the horses are in, because I know that's what they're ingesting. And paddock 3 is where they've just come from. So that's probably in its repair and phase. It's pointless really testing for that. And a lot of those paddocks, you can't get a very good sample anyway, because the grass has been grazed and it's quite low. And the only sample you can get sometimes is from a latrine or a dung area, which is going to give you a totally false reading. So concentrate on herbies tests throughout the season by month. That's not every month or anything. So early season, mid season, late season, to give you a graph of where you are. And that's what with the carbon calculator and Alice, that's what we're looking at: a baseline soil, and then early season, mid season, late season herbage. And from that data, you can pull together a bit of a flow of what's happening to your grass. And in equine grass, we don't want peaks. There's not always very too good or too bad. What we just want is an even grass growth. We don't want great flushes of grass, and we don't want great droughts of grass. We just want an even leafy growth.
We've got a lot of members who are very practical people. So just kind of in practical terms, what can people expect to see as a result of using the carbon calculator and herbage testing? If you were plugging that to somebody and they said, why should I bother? What's the sort of, you're a practical man, Paul, what's the kind of good thing?
First thing, and it's probably not the first thing that pops into anybody listening's mind, is I see the carbon calculator being a good indicator to where my costs are. Where am I spending money? If my carbon use is high, am I getting a return on that carbon use? So fuel, whether it's in boxes, whether it's on tractors,
It's particularly pertinent at the moment, isn't it?
Yeah. So I see the carbon calculator as being able to track and give you an indicator where your costs are. Again, I'm a farmer at home. At home, I've got a yield and a sales price and a cost of production. Equine, we have got no cost of productions. That doesn't come in it, but we have got costs. And as business managers, we need to highlight where those costs are. So hard feed, cost of grass. How much am I spending on my grass? And probably you'll see you're probably not spending that much on your grass, but you can be spending an awful lot on hard feeds. And as we all know, the hard feeds that have got soya and maize in them are going to carbon score very badly because, they're being imported. And probably barley, oats and more traditional feeds will probably score a lot better, just because of their carbon footprints of them. But so if you're looking at your machinery costs, if you've got very low machinery costs, you're probably not using your machinery enough. It's sitting in the shed. If you've got very, very high costs, is it operators, or is it operator training, or is it overuse?
So it gives you that real insight into the workings of your stud and your farm, doesn't it? That actually is.
As we look out the office window now, we see the lawns and that around there. So,
beautiful lawn at the TBA headquarters, just for the record.
So, but that's a major carbon cost because somebody's cutting it, somebody's manicuring it, and some of the carbon savings can be from wildflower meadows, letting some of the non-grazed areas go longer. You introducing herbs and wildflowers in them, bees, pollen and nectar mixes, cuts your cost and increase your biodiversity.
And that is a lovely plug back to a webinar we did with Philip Norden, if you want to go back and listen to that, talking about biodiversity and government subsidies, which are about to come back on that, which is a whole other topic. I'm sure Paul is all over SFI, but if you want to know a bit more about that, then there's a whole webinar session about that, which is definitely worth listening to. We have run out of time, which is a great sadness because I feel like I talked to you for hours, Paul. To be honest, this is a great topic. We will get you back on for more chats about paddocks in the future. There is absolutely no doubt about that. But thank you very much for your time. It's much appreciated.
Thank you.
Somehow it's May already and spring has well and truly sprung. Whilst the weather and rainfall have been variable, to say the least, here in the UK, and it is pretty dry in places, We were interested to hear about a campaign from Plant Life, which is a charity that aims to protect and restore nature and connect people with the world around them. The initiative is called No Mow May, and I was joined by Ruth Dancer, the director of White Griffin, to talk about the campaign. So Ruth, thank you so much for coming along. Do you want to just give us a little bit of background about yourself and White Griffin, how you got started?
Yeah,
Ruth?
of course, and thanks so much for having me. So really, White Griffin are responsible for supporting the horse industry, both equestrian and horse racing, and a bit of polo as well, with understanding how to transition in this new world we're heading towards, with all the challenges of sustainability, whether it's climate change, water shortages, resource depletion, that sort of thing, so that we can have and continue to have a really thriving sport across the board. And we've been conducting all sorts of research, producing tools, and really just supporting the industry with hopefully feeling more inspired than fearful about what that looks like, and getting everyone well on the road to creating that really successful future.
Brilliant, brilliant, brilliant. So paddocks, everyone's got them. If you're raising horses, particularly foals, we think about grass, we think about paddocks, we think about a lot of that. We are going to be talking a little bit about No Mow May today. As I said, I feel like I have to say that very slowly. It's not really tripping off my tongue, if I'm honest. Do you want to just talk us through the concept of that, and then we can dig into the detail a little bit, Ruth?
Yeah, for sure. So No Mow May, where I did that quite quickly, didn't I?
You did, very impressive. Yeah.
So No Mow May was established in 2019 by a company called Plant Life, sorry, that's the northerner in me coming up. And they're a great organisation. They're essentially there to encourage us to look after nature, no matter how we touch it. And obviously in the horse world, we touch it in lots of different ways. I'm looking out behind my computer, as it were, at my paddock, which is looking awful. And the main reason for that is because obviously we had an extremely wet winter period and into early spring, and now we've had an extremely dry spring. People may not feel it or may not have noticed it, but my paddock is already cracking quite badly.
Wow.
I do feel like I need to footnote that by saying this is a new property for me. I haven't yet had a chance to put all the interventions in that myself and my team and our ecologists recommend to people. But it's actually quite interesting for me to see how much just our simple paddock, and it's only an acre, how much it's been impacted by that shift we've had. And so I'm going to be able to see what difference the interventions make, and hopefully be able to say, ta-da, see, told you it works. So Plant Life is really, and No Mow May is about, how do we do better for our grasslands? How do we get them thriving again? Because you probably know, Naomi, that we've lost 97% of our species-rich grasslands since the 1930s, and that is an astonishing figure.
It really is, isn't it?
It's actually so high you can't really, it doesn't feel real. You can't actually really understand what that might mean. But it's true through all the different things that we know about, whether it's agriculture, building, construction work, whatever it might be. You know, our grasslands have changed so substantially. But they are so important. They are phenomenal carbon sinks. They're probably better than trees for carbon storage. So we always talk about plant the trees, which is super important, but looking after our grassland is maybe even more important. And it impacts our wildlife. So we are in Britain one of the worst countries in the world for our biodiversity loss, and we're at the bottom of the G7 nations. So again, through that grassland depletion, we've lost so much of our native habitat as well. So Plant Life is about, it's not over for us. We can do better. We can reverse, we can restore. Mother Nature has a phenomenal capacity to repair herself if she just gets a bit of a helping hand. And when we help her, she helps us. And that's the key bit as to why would No Mow May be relevant to our breeders, and why is it useful for us to have good quality grasslands, whether it's in our paddocks or our surrounding areas.
Yeah, brilliant. I mean, and actually we think about grass as a form of food, but actually grass adds so much more to the environment as well, doesn't it? And supporting pollinators is one thing, but a really interesting area that that has cropped up a little bit in conversation is you mentioned we've had a very dry spring. Well, some of us have had a very dry spring, and particularly in the southeast, it's starting to look quite the ground is quite hard already in places, but that longer grass and the grassland itself can protect the soil from heat. Ruth, can you talk us through that? Because obviously we're also having very hot summers coming up, or have been in the last few years, and who knows what's ahead of us for 2026. But can you talk us a little bit through the benefit of grass and giving it a bit of length in terms of looking after the soil as well?
Yeah, you're exactly spot on. Nature knows exactly what it's been doing. It's been around a lot longer than humans have. It knows how to survive. There's a reason for a diverse grassland mix. It works because you get that lovely dense coverage. So if we're just talking about a paddock, if you've got longer swords of a different variety and that density, you've got a lot of action going on above the surface. And exactly as you say, you're protecting essentially the soil, and the soil is the foundation of everything. If you ever talk to anyone from the Soil Association or any amazing soil geeks, they'll tell you it's the foundation of life. And so grass is there partly to protect that most fundamental gold of nature, which is the soil. So when we have these increasingly hot summers, and 40-degree summers are 10 times more likely now than they were before, what happens is that grass protects that soil from baking, which means that you're going to have a healthy pasture for longer. And similarly, because we're going to get warmer, wetter winters, so we're just gonna unfortunately, we're going to continue to get these dark, wet winters. It's more resilient also to the extreme wet weather because the soil is better able to absorb the water. Long roots, creating this deep, intense root system. So ultimately, it's nature's perfect protection for that soil and ultimately, therefore, for the paddock. So yes, we want it lovely and long and luscious because it's fibrous for our horse diet, and it's plentiful, but it's also serving a really important function for protecting and maintaining really high quality soil.
Perfect. Okay, so let's talk practicalities. So people will often be out there with their mowers or not in some cases. People do things differently. In practical terms, Ruth, how would you see reducing mowing or No Mow May being taken into people's routines and regimes and plans for their farms?
Well, I think you way to frame the question is really, really important, because although we love an ultimatum in society, don't we? Know whether it's to do with our health, it's like veganuary or dry January, or it's basically just stop everything, don't do anything, because I don't know, somehow as human beings, I think we work better with a bit of an ultimatum. But what we really advocate for is sustainability is about balance. So it's what works for nature and what works for your operation on your farm. So No Mow May is great because it's this ultimatum type sort of thing, like pack the lawnmower away for the whole of May, no matter what, and then you can get it back out in June, because it's encouraging nature to have a chance. But if that's not practical, then sometimes if you normally mow, gosh, I mean, some people are mowing 3 times a week. If you can even just cut that down to once a week, that is an improvement. Granted, it's not as good as not mowing altogether, but sometimes it's about doing the best you can. And I would like us to start advocating for more of that, because then we'll lose the whataboutism and we'll lose the, yeah, but you do this and I've seen that. And actually what nature really wants us to do is just do our best to try and help her out. So in practical terms, it is what works for your operation. So if you can not mow for the whole of May, perfect, that's great, because the grass, the ground, the soil, nature, the invertebrates, the pollinators, they're all going to get a really good chance to do the job that they're on this planet to do. And then, in June and July, just phase it back in. You don't have to go from I didn't do anything at all to thank goodness I'm back on my mower, I'm on it every day, hallelujah. Phase it back in, because what would be nice is if you as that business owner can actually see that it was beneficial. If it's a little bit like dieting for a month, seeing that you've lost a bit of weight and then going, oh, thank goodness that's over, and then just diving into the donuts, you're probably going to put the weight back on and there was no point to any of it. So I think from a practical point of view, ideally, you're not going to mow. You're going to let them have a really good chance at this early part of spring, summer. The other thing I would say is, clearly not a lot of people are going to be mowing their paddocks. We've had a very, very challenging, I would say we're looking at a couple of years actually of feeding our horses on the ground. This isn't a recent thing. We've had quite a lot of extremes. We had the wettest 18 months on record before we even hit this winter. So I would say that we probably don't really want to be mowing our pastures anyway. We want to be giving all that lovely food to our horses. But if people are doing that for some reason, then I would just say stop or do as little as you possibly can and just see what comes through, see what your ground can do, see how well it can perform, and let it come to life. For the surrounding areas where you're not grazing your horses or indeed any other animals you might have on site, that's where you really can experiment and actually have some fun and just not mow and see what comes through and start to notice the way the ecosystem restores. Because the key thing about this is that the reason why we have such a diverse ecosystem is it's complementary to one another. So the ideal scenario for me is that we get our businesses to not mow around all those areas that are not used to feed horses.
So you're talking like field edges and the
field edges, margins, even around the house, your garden, even because for the most part people are living on site. Just even car parking areas, everyone has somewhat different layouts, but anything that you're not physically going to let a horse eat, that's all a good opportunity for a space to grow. And every pollinator will thank you for every inch you give them. But the magic of what can happen, and this is where probably a few people's ears will prick up, is it can, if it's done right and consistently, it can save you money. Because the whole point that all these critters that suddenly say, oh, fantastic, I've got some habitat, I've got some food, they act as a natural pest control. They act as natural fertilizers for the soil. They act as natural cover. So you then at that point are putting fewer interventions into the ground. And that's what we really, really want. We don't want to see the pesticides go in, and we don't want to see synthetic fertilizers go in. So something as simple as letting all of your edges, verges, car parking, garden, whatever, grow could ultimately benefit the overall site, because the whole ecosystem will work together, even if it's not the same patch of ground.
And just on some of those benefits, I guess there'd be some people on large farms where mowing is resource intensive, it's quite carbon intensive, the cost of diesel has gone up like crazy. Do you want to chat us through a few of the other benefits that might not be kind of immediately obvious, Ruth, as well?
Well, the number one is money. You're right. Diesel has shot up. And, if we're not mowing, if we're not getting that diesel mower out, big ride-on or handheld, whatever it is that handheld, push mower, whatever it is that you're using, that's money back in the pocket. So straight away, and it's instant. You're not looking for some sort of 7-year solar panel return on investment. That is immediate money in your pocket. And actually, there are lots of great examples, but the British Racing School is a really good example of this. They used to mow a huge, great stretch all the way up the paddocks. And they don't do it anymore. And actually, the guys that used to do that mowing can now spend time working in the more planted areas, so they can take care of all the apple trees and the vegetables and the flower beds and the hedgerows and everything else on site. So you're moving money and resource away from a task that we don't really want you to be doing anyway. And I think really we have to think about, why are we doing it? And for the most part, maybe not everyone, but for most part, it's because we think it looks neater. And I think we just have to rethink what is aesthetic and what isn't aesthetic. Most people would rather look out on beautiful English native wildflowers, wild grasslands buzzing with pollinators than what would be, by the time we get to our super hot, dry July and August, just a sort of cracked earth, vaguely green area that we used to perceive as being neat and smart. It would be so much more beautiful to sort of see all that green, and so much more beneficial. So the benefits for me are saving time, saving money on diesel and potentially manpower, though obviously we would want to put that manpower in someone else. Don't want to do someone out of a job. I'll get letters. I'll get letters, Naomi.
Don't worry, we will too.
Yeah. So I would say those, and I think, clearly the other benefit is horse health. If we are going back to the grazing land, if we are talking about grazing land, we know we want a longer sword, we want a diverse sword. It's healthier in terms of the fibrous content, but also they're going to be chewing more. They're going to be producing more saliva in their mouth, which improves their gut health. So it's just all good. And I think, I'm happy for someone to come at me with some bad, but I just feel the good is overwhelming. There's an overwhelming case for this.
Okay. Well, we have laid down the gauntlet there that you can reduce, do your best. Like you say, Ruth, everything's very individual, isn't it? Everyone's farm is different. Everyone's property is different. The size is different. But I think just making attempts to reduce how much we mow, whether that is in paddocks, around the studs, there's a lot we can all do to make small steps for nature on that front. I think would that be your take home? Have you got another take home for me?
That is definitely the take home. It's let's not put ourselves under huge pressure, but actually, hey, give ourselves one less job to do. It saves us money. Your farm will look beautiful. It will be brimming with colour and life, and maybe you will be happy to leave it that way for the whole summer.
Brilliant. We will put a link to Ruth's website in the show notes of this. So if you're interested in learning more, then she is really fantastic. And there is lots of stuff online about this as well, which we will try and get some links to as well. But Ruth, thank you. It's a lovely flavour. And I think actually little by little we can get the pollinators, we can get the plants, we can get the flowers. And we can all do a little bit in the best way we can to help with this.
That's right. After all, it's what our sport's all about.
Absolutely.
It's all about the land and nature and animals. That's why we love being outside and doing this to ourselves.
And on that note, we shall leave it. Ruth, thank you very much. It's been a joy.
You're welcome. Thank you, Naomi.
If you're interested in finding out more, we've linked to a previous TB Ed recording from Paul in the show notes, and Ruth's website is also linked there, along with details of Plant Life's No Mow May campaign. Finally this week, Clare Daniels, TB Ed Operations Executive, caught up with the instructors and students on the Level 3 Equine First Aid course at the British Racing School, which was run by the Racing Staff Development Programme. We work alongside the teams at the BRS and the RSDP a lot here at the TBA, and we wanted to showcase some of the great work going on elsewhere in the industry. So enjoy this.
So I'm now joined by Sam, and we are now taking all across to the new barn where the learners are going to be undertaking some of their practical tasks after learning all the theory stuff in the classroom. And I'm joined by Sam, who's leading the course, one of the tutors leading the course. So Sam, can you tell me a little bit more about the course itself and how it's come to sort of the structure it has today?
Yeah, so we kind of realised that as an industry, really, whether you're from the stud side or the racing side, that the senior staff that are doing such a great job all the time need some form of recognition and qualification to add to their CV. And also there's lots of aspiring, junior stud grooms and assistants that want progression in the industry. So it's really to help them, give them a platform and to be confident in Equine First Aid, that they'll know the referral point when the vet's needed, know what first aid they can do in the interim. And I think the course really offers like a nice blend of learning. You cover the theory, and then once you feel confident, you can then apply some of that in the afternoon in a real horse situation.
And that I think is really valuable, isn't it? Because there's more well and good understanding the theory, which is comprehensively covered, but then the opportunity to come out and actually practice a lot of those skills on horses is key.
Yeah, definitely. And I think it's so nice as well as a group. It's great for networking. You know, we've got people today that have met new people from different yards. They've kind of seemed to have grown in confidence, and they've been able to confidentially share their experiences, and we've been able to standardise them and add the changes to Equine First Aid that have occurred in the last few years. And what they can really do to help vets, kind of give them that platform to ensure the horse gets the best standard of care.
Brilliant, thank you. Well, I shall leave you to it. It looks like they're going into the barn now. So, Sam, thank you for your time, and we hope the rest of the afternoon goes well.
Thank you.
And Paul, what is it you're actually doing now?
So we're taking the vital signs of this horse, so temperature, breathing rate and heart rate. So pretty much just making sure that they're between the normal rates. So for heart rate between 36 and 48, and breathing rate between 16 to 18 breaths per minute. And again, with temperature like 37.5 to 38.5.
Awesome. And this is stuff that you learned this morning in the course. Is that right?
Yeah, that's right.
And they're the basic health markers that everyone should know how to do.
Yeah, so we're just trying to improve our basic skills and try to be head lad as well.
Awesome. Well, thank you guys. Thank you very much. Can you just explain what you're about to do?
I'm about to take the horse's temperature for the very first time.
Awesome. But to be fair, it's the stuff that we've covered in the classroom this morning.
Yeah.
Around the theory and that. So, yeah. And the opportunity to be able to demonstrate or have a practice here must be invaluable there.
Yeah, it's great to actually learn how to do it without having to be in a situation where I need to do it for a medical reason. And then I obviously don't know how to do it without former practice. So it's not like I don't have the pressure on me to get a correct reading if things don't go to plan or something like that, because it's not a medical emergency or I don't need it for medical reasons. So I've got the chance to practice beforehand in a non-pressured setting.
Which is obviously a great practice, isn't it? So
Yeah.
Have you found the course useful? Has it been interesting?
Oh, I've had such a great day. Like, I've learned so much. I'm currently doing my level 3 anyway. So
apprenticeship?
My apprenticeship. So that all sort of what I've learned today goes towards my level 3 as well. And sort of for me down the line, I want to learn and go into sort of travelling head side of things, and then eventually maybe be a head lass. So learning all this valuable medical stuff is going to help me so much down the line, and just in general situations in a yard or if I'm racing or.
Brilliant, awesome. Well, thank you so much, and good luck with it all.
Thank you.
Well, we hope you enjoyed listening to Sam and also hearing from the learners themselves about their experiences of the course. If you're interested in June's course taking place at the National Stud on Wednesday the 24th, please do drop the RSDP team an email direct, and that is hello@rsdp.co.uk. The cost of the course is £60 per person. That does include lunch. All this information will also be accompanied in the show notes with this podcast.
That's all for today. Thanks so much for listening. You can follow us on Instagram @thetba.gb, and don't forget to tag us in your posts. We're always here to help, so do give us a ring or drop us an email at info@thetba.co.uk if you need anything. We'd love to hear from you. We'll be back in a couple of weeks, and we really hope that you'll join us then.